The beep of an old vending machine was the only sound in the dim hospital corridor. Kira Blaze sat on a cold plastic bench, her hands clenched so tight the skin around her knuckles had gone white. Her father's coat was folded in her lap, soaked with sweat from his collapse that morning. She hadn't even noticed her own tears until a drop hit the floor. A nurse finally emerged. Not smiling, not gentle, just clinical. "Your father's in stable condition," she said flatly, eyes already on the chart. "But he needs a rare neurovascular procedure, not covered under public plans." Kira stood. "How much?" $50,000. Up front. Her breath caught. She'd never even seen that kind of money in one place. The nurse didn't wait for a reply. She just walked off, clipboard in hand, like it was normal, like shattering someone's world was just another task before lunch break. Kira sat down slowly. She had maybe 72 hours before her dad's condition worsened. 72 hours to either become a miracle or a monster. A soft click echoed in the hallway. She turned and froze. Odessa Langford. No introduction, no handshake, just that icy elegance and the calculating stare of someone used to owning people like property. "Miss Blaze," Odessa said, tone smooth as glass. "I understand your father needs urgent help." Kira stood cautiously. "How do you know that?" Odessa walked closer. Her perfume was expensive, sterile, emotionless. "I make it my business to know everything about those who work under my roof." Kira blinked. "I clean your house, and I run it," Odessa replied sharply. "My son Corbin just returned from Europe. There's a situation. He needs a wife for one night, just one." Kira's mouth opened. Closed. "I don't understand." Odessa didn't flinch. "A contract marriage, signed, witnessed, consummated." She pulled a small folder from her clutch and opened it. Neatly typed pages, already presigned on one end. "In return, you'll receive $50,000, enough to cover the surgery." Silence stretched. "Why me?" Odessa didn't even blink. "Because you're forgettable, discreet, desperate." Kira's heart pounded in her ears. "This is insane." "Not as insane as watching your father die," Odessa said, voice cool and final. Kira swallowed hard. No family, no savings, no time. She had no choice. She took the pen and signed. "Hello, my wonderful and amazing family. I'm keeping this introduction short so we can dive right in. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, tap that like button, and share this video with your loved ones. It really helps the channel grow. As always, I'm Dr. Phillips. And now, let's get started." Langford Manor stood like a fortress, cold stone, taller than pride, older than mercy. Kira stepped out of the car, sent to pick her up. Her cheap flats touched down on marble, so polished it reflected her uncertainty back at her. The uniform she wore earlier was gone, replaced with a black cocktail dress Odessa's assistant had handed her without a word. Inside, silence ruled. No butlers, no echo of laughter. Just one woman waiting at the top of the grand staircase. Odessa Langford, pristine in a tailored white suit, as untouched by emotion as the crystal chandelier above her. "This way," she said simply. Kira followed. They entered a drawing room so immaculate it didn't feel human. Odessa gestured toward a leather chair. Kira sat, unsure whether to cross her legs or hold her breath. Odessa didn't bother sitting. "You'll be introduced as his wife," she said. "There will be a brief ceremony, legal paperwork, no guests, no photos." Kira's voice barely rose. "And Corbin knows about this?" "He doesn't need to. He does as he's told." Kira blinked. "But it's a marriage. A business arrangement," Odessa corrected. "Your job is to get through tonight. One night. Then you disappear and you never contact him again." Kira's throat tightened. "And the surgery money?" "Waiting in escrow. Released once the paperwork and completion are verified." "Completion?" Odessa looked her dead in the eye. "There must be evidence." Kira looked down, cheeks burning. I've never done anything like this." Odessa narrowed her eyes. "You scrub toilets in my house. Let's not pretend you've ever had the luxury of dignity." Kira's breath caught. Then Odessa walked over to a small side table, pulled out a silver box and placed it in front of her. Inside, a delicate wedding band. Simple, real. Kira's hands trembled as she picked it up. "You wear that tonight," Odessa said. You play your role. Then you leave. Kira stood, the ring still between her fingers. Why does he need a wife at all? Odessa finally looked away, just for a second. There are family shares tied to an inheritance clause. Marriage unlocks access. That's all you need to know. Kira stared at the woman in front of her. Cold, ruthless, and terrifyingly calm. What if I say no? Odessa didn't hesitate. Then you walk out that door, and your father dies in a charity ward. The words sliced through her like a blade. There was no room for emotion, no bargaining chip left. She nodded once, voice barely a whisper. Where do I go? The guest suite. There will be attendants. You'll be ready by 8. The ceremony is at 9. Odessa turned and walked away. Kira stood there, wedding band in hand, dress clinging to her like a disguise. She didn't feel like a bride. She felt sold. The clock struck 9. Kira stood at the far end of the gold-trimmed parlor, wearing a fitted ivory dress that Odessa's team had chosen. It clung to her curves in quiet defiance, the lace collar high enough to be modest, yet snug enough to remind her who she was pretending to be. A small arch had been erected near the fireplace. White roses. No guests. No joy. Just legal precision. A man in a suit handed her a stack of documents. Sign here. Initial here. Full name here. Thank you. She barely processed the words, fingers moving on instinct. Her stomach churned. Then she saw him. Corbin Langford. Tall. Dark suit. Expression unreadable. He didn't walk in. He prowled. Confident, annoyed, exhausted. His tie was still loose from the flight, and his cufflinks weren't even fastened. He looked at the setup, the officiant, the documents, and then at her. His eyes narrowed. You're the bride? Kira nodded, throat dry. I am. He looked past her to Odessa, who stood at the back of the room like a judge overseeing a trial. His jaw tightened. This is the solution? It's the requirement, Odessa said flatly. Marriage unlocks your shares. Corbin exhaled sharply and turned back to Kira. I don't know you. You don't need to, Odessa replied before she could. The officiant cleared his throat and began the quick legal ceremony. No vows, no music, no love, just signatures. Kira's pen hovered above the final line. Her father's face flashed through her mind, pale, weak, still breathing only because she hadn't walked away. She signed. Corbin hesitated. Then, with an almost imperceptible sigh, signed next to her name. Congratulations, the man said dryly. You're legally husband and wife. Corbin looked at her one more time, then walked over to the bar in the corner of the room and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. You didn't have to do this, he muttered, without looking up. Kira swallowed. Neither did you. He turned to her, really seeing her for the first time. What's your name? Kira. You agreed to marry a stranger. Why? She met his gaze, voice quiet but steady. Because my father is dying. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, guilt, recognition. They stood there in silence as Odessa handed the final documents to her lawyer. Corbin raised his glass. To contracts. Kira didn't smile. She didn't raise a glass. She raised her chin and walked out of the room before her knees could buckle. It was nearing midnight when Kira heard the car pull into the circular driveway. She stood by the bedroom window, wrapped in a silk robe that Odessa's assistant had pressed into her hands hours earlier. Her hair was curled. Her skin glowed, but inside she felt nothing like a bride, more like a prisoner waiting to be summoned. A door slammed. Footsteps approached. Then the door creaked open, and Corbin Langford stepped inside. His tie was gone. Shirt partially unbuttoned. Hair tousled from the wind. He looked at her, then shut the door behind him with a tired sigh. You're still here, he said. Kira's hands tightened around the fabric of her robe. You sound surprised. He loosened the last button on his collar, walking to the liquor tray. Honestly, I didn't expect you to go through with it. I didn't expect to be thrown into this, she replied, voice calm but direct. Corbin poured himself a glass of scotch. No ice, no toast. He sipped, watching her from across the room. You don't have to stay the night, he said finally. Whatever agreement you made with my mother, I won't hold you to it. Kira raised her chin. The contract is signed. He smirked faintly. Contracts don't guarantee loyalty, or comfort, or respect. No, she said softly. They just buy time. Corbin's smile faded. A beat passed, then another. Finally, he set his glass down and crossed the room toward her. He stopped just short, close enough for her to feel the warmth of his breath, far enough to leave space for rejection. I don't want to hurt you, he said quietly. You haven't, she whispered. You don't know me. You don't know me either. Their eyes held. Something unspoken pulsed between them, faint, fragile, but undeniably real. Corbin exhaled, stepped back, and sat down in the chair by the fireplace. You can take the bed, he said. I'll sleep here. Kira stood there, motionless, until he leaned his head back and closed his eyes. She walked to the edge of the bed, but she didn't lie down. Not yet. The flames in the fireplace flickered low, casting shadows across the silk sheets. Kira sat at the edge of the bed, unmoving, watching Corbin as he rested in the chair. His eyes were closed, but he wasn't asleep. She could tell from the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers gripped the armrest like he was holding back a storm. I'm not afraid of you, she said quietly. His eyes opened. You should be, he muttered. She stood and walked toward him, her bare feet soft against the rug. The silk robe whispered with each step. She stopped in front of him. I've given up more than you can imagine just to be here tonight, so don't tell me what I should feel. His gaze dragged up her body slowly. You think this is easy for me? Kira reached for the belt of her robe and untied it. The fabric slid from her shoulders and pooled at her feet. Corbin inhaled sharply. She stood before him, naked, unashamed, radiant. I didn't ask to be owned, she said. But if we're going to do this, I want it to be real. Just for tonight. He stood, not rushed, not hesitant. He walked to her like gravity itself had pulled him in. His fingers grazed her collarbone first, light, curious, reverent. Then he cupped her face and leaned in, his lips brushing hers like a question. She answered with a kiss that made them both stagger. Heat surged. The room melted around them. He lifted her, one arm under her thighs, the other cradling her back, and laid her gently on the bed. His lips traced down her neck, slow and unhurried, tasting every inch of her skin like he needed to memorize it. Kira arched, moaning softly as his mouth closed around her nipple, tongue circling in deliberate rhythm. You're trembling, he murmured. I'm burning, she breathed. He slid his hand between her thighs and groaned when he felt how wet she already was. Say it, he whispered. Tell me what you want. You, she gasped. I want all of you. He didn't make her beg. He undressed, never breaking eye contact. His body was strong, lean, and carved from years of discipline, but it was his eyes that undid her, that raw hunger, that need. He positioned himself between her legs, rubbing the thick head of his arousal along her slick folds. Tell me to stop, he whispered. I'll never say that. He pushed inside her slowly, deeply, stretching her until she cried out. Corbin groaned into her neck. You feel unreal. She wrapped her legs around him, pulling him deeper, anchoring herself to the only truth that mattered, that right now this moment was hers. Their bodies moved in perfect rhythm, skin against skin, sweat mixing with gasps, moans swallowed by kisses that grew rough, then soft, then desperate again. He filled her completely, again and again, each thrust harder, deeper, until the sound of their connection echoed through the room. When her release hit, she shattered beneath him, legs shaking, nails clawing his back. He didn't stop. He chased his own, grinding into her with ragged breath until he finally growled her name and spilled into her with a force that left him trembling. They collapsed together, breathless, tangled, silent. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, and then he kissed her shoulder. Soft, gentle, different. She looked up. He wasn't the cold man from before. Not anymore. The first light of dawn slipped through the tall curtains, painting gold across the room. Kira lay still, tangled in the sheets, her skin warm from the body beside hers. Corbin's arm was draped across her waist, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of deep sleep. For a moment, everything was still, peaceful, almost unreal. She turned her head slightly to look at him. In sleep, the hard lines of his face had softened. His brows no longer furrowed, his lips no longer guarded. He looked younger, kinder, human. Her fingers brushed his forearm. She thought about what they had done, what it had meant. Not just the contract, not just the act, but the way he'd touched her like she mattered. Like she wasn't just part of some deal. Like he needed her as much as she needed him. She wanted to believe it wasn't just performance, but reality didn't wait for hope. A soft knock echoed from the hallway, then a key turned in the lock. The door opened. Odessa, flanked by 2 staff members in dark suits, she entered like a queen inspecting her battlefield. Her eyes landed on Kira's bare shoulder peeking out from under the covers. The crumpled robe on the floor, Corbin still asleep, unaware. Odessa's expression didn't change. "Get her out," she said coldly. Kira sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest. "What are you doing?" "You fulfilled your part," Odessa replied without emotion. "You're no longer needed. You can't." "I can do anything I want," Odessa cut in. "The money is already transferred. The contract is complete. You will leave. Now." Corbin stirred beside her. Kira turned to him. "Corbin." But the guards were already moving. They grabbed her clothes from the chair, shoved them into her arms. Kira looked one last time at the man she'd just given herself to, his eyes fluttering open, confused, still half asleep. She wanted to call his name. But Odessa was faster. "If you speak to him again," she said, voice like ice, "I will bury your father before the week ends." Kira stood frozen, the sheet clutched to her chest, heart pounding. Then she did what she had always done. She disappeared. The alley smelled like damp cardboard and diesel. Kira sat on the cold pavement, her dress torn, her heels gone. The rain had started somewhere between the mansion gates and the subway stop she never reached. Her hair clung to her face and her arms wrapped tight around her stomach as if that could keep the pieces of her together. She had been dumped there like trash. No phone, no money, no goodbye, only silence, and Odessa's voice echoing in her head. "You're no longer needed." A taxi eventually slowed, probably out of pity. The driver didn't ask questions when she gave him the address to her old neighborhood. She had to borrow money from her neighbor's teenage son just to pay him. By the time she got inside the tiny apartment, she collapsed. 12 hours later, she was still curled on the couch when her old phone, charging from the last 5% of power, buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Final results: patient Kira Blaze. Diagnosis: permanent infertility. Signed, Dr. R. Halpern. Attached was a scanned document on expensive letterhead, stamped and signed. Her breath stopped. She stared at it. She hadn't taken any test. No doctor had touched her. But there it was. Cold, final, cruel. The paper said she could never have children. The message was clear. There would be no bonus, no future. And Corbin? He would never know she was once his wife. A knock came at the door. She flinched, then opened it. Odessa stood there, alone, still dressed like elegance itself. She handed her a manila envelope. "The funds are transferred," she said coolly. "As agreed." "I'm not infertile," Kira said flatly. "You forged that report." Odessa's lip curled. "It's not about truth, it's about control. You signed your life away. Don't make the mistake of thinking this was ever about you." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh," she added, "if you ever attempt to contact Corbin again, I'll see to it that your father is moved to a facility with fewer amenities." Kira's hand curled into a fist, but she said nothing. Odessa left, and the door clicked shut. Kira stood in the quiet, the paper still glowing on the cracked phone screen. Fake, fabricated. She'd been thrown away, but Odessa had miscalculated one thing. Kira hadn't missed her period. She walked to the mirror. Her reflection stared back, bruised, betrayed, but alive. And somewhere, deep inside her, 2 heartbeats were growing. The envelope was thick, but the check inside was missing. All that remained were blank documents and a thin slip of paper, payment voided. Terms violated. Kira stared at it, the words blurring through her tears. Her chest tightened, the pressure rising until it felt like her ribs would crack. She'd sold herself, endured humiliation, survived betrayal, and now, even the blood money had been snatched away. Odessa hadn't just kicked her out. She had erased her. Kira paced the apartment, trembling. The walls felt smaller with every step. The old couch, the water-stained ceiling, the forgotten smell of her former life, it all crashed back around her like punishment. Her father was still in the hospital, barely hanging on, and now there was a baby. No, 2. She could feel it. Don't ask how. She just knew. She clutched her abdomen as nausea swept over her. Not from fear, from the life already stirring inside her. Kira stumbled into the tiny bathroom, gripping the sink as her reflection swam before her. "I won't break," she whispered. But her voice cracked. She threw up. Again. Her knees buckled. She lay on the cracked tile floor, forehead pressed against cold porcelain, tears mixing with sweat. There was no safety net, no backup plan. She was alone, and Odessa had made sure of it. The next day, she dragged herself to a free clinic. She didn't have the energy to lie. She handed over her ID, her insurance denial letter, and filled out every form with fingers that shook. When the nurse called her name, she followed in silence. The test was fast, the ultrasound slower. The technician glanced at the screen, then back at Kira. "Have you been feeling extra tired?" Kira nodded, barely breathing. "You're not imagining it," the woman said with a small smile. "There are two—" Kira blinked. "Two? Twins." A beat passed. Her whole world shifted. She stared at the monitor. 2 little blips. 2 flickers of life. 2 reasons not to give up. She walked home slowly that evening, hands protectively over her belly. Odessa thought she had destroyed her. Instead, she had planted fire. Kira reached her apartment, locked the door behind her, and sat in silence for a long time. No sobbing this time, just steady breath. And one vow: I will raise them on my own, and one day they'll know the truth. The envelope sat untouched on the kitchen table, its edges now curled from being opened and closed too many times. Inside were the forged test results. Odessa's lie. Kira stared at it every morning like a scar that never faded. But the image burned into her memory more vividly was the one from the clinic. 2 tiny flickers. 2 heartbeats. She kept that printout inside her wallet. Not for proof. For strength. She didn't have time to dwell. Bills were due. Her father's medication list kept growing, and her own body had already begun to change. Morning sickness, swelling ankles, the way her clothes clung too tight too fast. She picked up 2 part-time jobs, receptionist during the day, dishwasher at night. No one asked questions, and she didn't offer answers. She learned how to sleep sitting upright in a waiting room chair. She learned how to eat a full meal for $3. She learned how to breathe through cramps and work through fatigue. But the nights were the hardest. That was when she thought of Corbin, not the man on the contract, the man who touched her like she was more than a transaction, the one who kissed her like she was his, the one who never knew, and maybe never would. She wondered if he ever asked, if he even realized she was gone the next morning, if his mother kept him in the dark. She wanted to believe he wasn't part of it, that he wasn't cold enough to forget her so quickly. But her hope had limits, and survival didn't make space for fantasy. 6 months passed. Her father stabilized after surgery, thanks to an anonymous donation Kira funneled from the last savings she had left. He never asked where the money came from. He only smiled and called her his angel. She didn't correct him. The twins grew stronger every week. She could feel them stretching, kicking, turning inside her like they were eager to meet the world. And every time she looked in the mirror, she saw less of the frightened girl Odessa tried to erase, and more of the woman she was becoming. On a cold morning in January, she stood outside a tall office building downtown. A media startup had just launched, and they were hiring entry-level assistants. She walked inside, interviewed, and left with a job. It didn't pay much, but it was a start, and she was done being stepped on. She was building something now, for them, for herself. 5 years later, no one called her Kira Blaze the maid. Now she was Kira Blaze, CEO of Blaze Dominion, a billion-dollar digital media empire with global influence and razor-sharp reach. The lobby of her Manhattan headquarters mirrored her transformation: glass, steel, and precision. Her stilettos clicked against marble floors that now bowed to her. Assistants scrambled with iPads and whispered updates into earpieces. No one dared make her repeat herself. She entered the boardroom. All men stood. She didn't ask them to. They just knew. Kira took her seat at the head of the table, opened her sleek black portfolio, and cut straight to business. The Santiago merger closes Friday. Legal needs the final numbers by noon. If we miss that deadline, we pivot to Hong Kong. Any objections? Silence. She gave a single nod, then turned to her coup. And the data breach? Contained. Firewalls rebuilt. Internal source eliminated. Her fingers drummed once on the table. Quietly, Yes, ma'am. Good. Meeting adjourned. No wasted words. No unnecessary flattery. Just execution. By the time she reached her private elevator, her executive assistant, Maya, was already waiting with a fresh folder and 2 black coffees. You've got lunch with the governor's press team at 1, Maya rattled off, and your twin's school called. Kyle had a nosebleed but refused to leave class. Said he was in the middle of a calculated defense strategy. Lyra, however, organized a mini protest against cafeteria pizza. Kira smirked, taking a sip of her coffee. They're becoming dangerous, she said. Wonder where they get it from, Maya replied with a grin. The elevator doors opened into her penthouse office. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the room in sunlight, casting long streaks over leather furniture and a massive onyx desk. Photos lined the side table, one of her father, now retired and healthy. One of Kyle and Lyra, age 5, dressed as a space commander and a courtroom judge for Halloween. They had her curls, Corbin's eyes. She didn't talk about him, not even to herself. He'd vanished from her life the moment Odessa pulled her out of that bed. Maybe he believed the lie. Maybe he didn't care. Either way, she'd survived without him, and built everything he never got to see. She sat down, flipping through the acquisition papers Maya had handed her, until her eyes stopped on one name. Langford Group, attempting a hostile bid on a tech firm Blaze Dominion had been circling for months. Her fingers stilled. Odessa's name didn't appear, but that signature Langford arrogance was all over the paperwork. Aggressive, underhanded, desperate. Kira smiled. Not warm, not amused. Strategic. She reached for the phone. Maya, she said calmly, get legal. We're going to crush them. And make sure the press knows exactly who's doing the crushing. There was no fear in her voice. Just quiet resolve. It was time, not just to protect what she'd built, but to face everything she never got to finish. The Blaze penthouse wasn't just a home, it was a sanctuary. Modern, sleek, and perched above the skyline, it looked like something off a magazine cover. But inside, it echoed with laughter, crayons on marble, and the occasional explosion of pillow forts in the living room. Kyle and Lyra ruled this empire as much as their mother did. That evening, Kira arrived home to find the twins in full tactical debate. Kyle, wearing a navy bathrobe like a military general, had built a base out of couch cushions and declared it Fort Freedom. Lyra, his twin by 7 minutes, wore a gold tiara and a velvet cape, pointing dramatically at the ceiling. I'm claiming air rights, she announced, one tiny fist raised. And Fort Freedom is now under the jurisdiction of the magical Republic of Lyra. Kyle stood his ground. Your republic didn't file the paperwork. Kira leaned against the wall, smiling. Do I need to declare martial law in this apartment? She asked, crossing her arms. Both twins froze, then squealed. Mommy. They ran to her at full speed, wrapping themselves around her legs. Kira dropped to her knees, gathering them into her arms, kissing the tops of their curly heads. You two are exhausting, she said, pretending to groan. We're inventing new government systems, Kyle replied proudly. I'm running for president, Lyra added. But Cal says I'm too emotional. Not emotional, Kyle corrected. Just dramatic. Kira pulled back to look at them. Kale, sharp-eyed and serious, already asking too many questions about stock prices, Lyra, fire and flare, full of plans and sass and glitter. They were everything she had ever hoped for, and everything Odessa swore she'd never have. After dinner, homemade spaghetti and far too many napkin jokes, Kira bathed them, read them 2 chapters from their favorite fantasy book, and tucked them into bed. Kyle snuggled in beside his stuffed dragon. Lyra clutched her teddy bear like a crown jewel. Kira kissed their foreheads, one after the other. Mommy, Kyle asked, blinking up at her. Why don't we have a dad like other kids? Kira froze. She knew the question would come. Eventually. Because, she said gently, brushing his curls back, some stories take longer to finish. But you were never missing anything, baby. You have me. Kyle accepted it with a nod. Lyra was already asleep. Kira lingered at the door, watching them. So innocent, so fearless, so hers. She walked back into her bedroom, stepped out of her heels, and let the silence settle in. She had fought for every inch of this life. Every sleepless night, every lost friend, every missed meal and heavy decision, it had brought her here. And though she was surrounded by wealth and power, it was the tiny heartbeat of her home, their laughter, their bedtime rituals, that grounded her. She reached for the framed ultrasound on her nightstand, the same one from 5 years ago, The one she kept near her even when she had nothing. 2 heartbeats. 2 reasons. And now, they were more than a reason. They were her legacy, and she would never let anyone threaten them. Not Odessa. Not Corbin. Not anyone. Kira's phone buzzed as she walked into her office the next morning. Maya's voice came through the speaker, calm but firm. "You'll want to see the overnight financials." Langford Group filed a direct bid on Turnix Analytics at 2:42 a.m. Kira stopped mid-step. Turnix Analytics. The same company Blaze Dominion had been quietly negotiating with for the past 8 months. She clenched her jaw and headed straight for her desk. By the time she sat down, the full report was already on her screen. Langford Group hadn't just filed a bid. They'd submitted it under a shadow holding company and offered above market value. It was aggressive, calculated, and designed to sabotage her move. Maya entered with a tablet. Also, a leaked headlines floating, "Langford eyes data market domination. Sounds like someone's trying to flex." Kira didn't blink. "Get me the acquisition attorney on call," she said, "and prepare a press draft. Make sure my name's on the offensive, not the defense." Maya nodded and moved like a woman on a mission. Kira stared at the screen again. There was no question who was behind this. Odessa Langford. Still reaching. Still underestimating her. The name Langford no longer made her flinch. Not after everything she had survived. But it made her focus. She stood from her desk and walked to the window, looking out at the sprawl of Manhattan. She didn't want revenge for what happened 5 years ago. This wasn't about payback. This was about principle. If the Langfords wanted war, she would give them one, with boardrooms instead of battlefields, headlines instead of swords, and the truth is her greatest weapon. Her intercom buzzed again. "Also," Maya added, "you're invited to the Manhattan Philanthropy Gala this weekend, same venue the Langfords are co-sponsoring. Your name was just added to the very important Persong West list." Kira smiled. Of course Odessa would make her move in public. Try to reclaim dominance through appearances and social power plays. But Kira wasn't the girl in the maid's uniform anymore. She didn't clean chandeliers. She bought the companies that made them. She turned from the window and opened her wardrobe. A crimson dress hung at the far end. Backless, bold, unapologetic. It wasn't just a gown. It was a statement. She had been dragged out of Langford Manor once. She would walk back in on her own terms. And this time, everyone would see her. "Hello, my wonderful family. If you are still here with me, still watching, still enjoying this story, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, because what happens next will make you see life in a different way." Now let's continue. The Manhattan Philanthropy Gala was the kind of event that fed tabloids for weeks. Wealth on parade, power wrapped in couture, every laugh rehearsed and every smile sharpened to cut. The chandeliers gleamed. The champagne flowed. And the Langfords stood at the center of it all, polished and smug beneath flashing lights. Odessa wore a pearl-encrusted gown, standing beside donors, camera-ready. She laughed at the right cues, gripped crystal flutes without spilling a drop, and held court like royalty. Until the doors opened again. Every head turned. Silence rippled through the room like a dropped stone in still water. And then came the murmurs. Kira Blaze had arrived. Crimson silk hugged every inch of her figure, the backless dress dipping low enough to scandalize but high enough to command. Her hair was swept up into a smooth knot, a single gold pin anchoring it like a crown. She wore no necklace, no earrings, just bold red lips and the confidence of a woman who had rebuilt her world from dust. The cameras found her instantly. Click, flash, click. Kira didn't flinch. She walked with deliberate steps, the slit in her dress slicing the air as she moved. She wasn't here to make an entrance. She was the entrance. Odessa's eyes narrowed as the whispers grew louder. "Is that her? That's Kira Blaze. Didn't she come out of nowhere? Langford Group tried to undercut her last quarter. She's the one who took over Stratland Media in less than a year, right?" Odessa's forced smile began to slip. Across the ballroom, Corbin Langford stood by the bar, bored, turning a glass between his fingers. Then he looked up and froze. The glass slipped from his hand. It shattered on the floor. His heart stilled in his chest. Kira. Her name didn't form on his lips, but it crashed through his mind like a wave. She looked untouched by time, but transformed all the same. Stronger, fiercer, alive. He stepped forward instinctively. Odessa reached for his arm. "Stay composed." she hissed. But he was already walking, straight toward the woman he thought had vanished forever. Kira's eyes met his halfway. There was no panic in her gaze, no longing, just precision and power. He stopped 2 feet in front of her. "You?" His voice cracked. She tilted her head. "Disappointed?" He didn't answer. "Couldn't. You're real," he whispered. "Clearly. My mother said you took the money and left, that you," his throat tightened, "weren't pregnant." She smiled, not gently, not kindly, but like a woman who knew she had the upper hand. She lied. He stared at her. "I had twins," she added. "You're a father." Corbin didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. The music, the clinking of glasses, the murmuring guests, all faded behind the thunder in his chest. He finally choked. Kira's voice was smooth, controlled, lethal. "You're a father, of twins." His hands fell to his sides like they no longer belonged to him. "That's not possible." I was told." "I know what you were told." Her gaze sharpened. "By the woman who had me dragged out of your bed before dawn." Odessa was suddenly at Corbin's side, her voice taut. "This isn't the time or place." Kira turned to her with the grace of a queen and the precision of a blade. "No, Odessa, it's the perfect place. You tried to erase me, but you forgot something." She took a step closer. "You forgot I survived." Corbin's voice dropped. "You were pregnant, and you didn't come to me?" Kira's breath caught. Then she looked at him, not with rage, but with hurt. Quiet, buried hurt. "You watched me vanish and didn't look, or did you not notice at all?" "I did look," he said hoarsely. "I searched for you for months. My mother told me you'd taken the money and disappeared, that there was nothing left, no child, no marriage worth saving." Kira's jaw tightened. "And you believed her?" He was silent. The weight of it hung between them. Her voice softened, but only just. "I bled for that silence. I gave birth alone, built my life from scratch while you sat in penthouses sipping bourbon, thinking I had walked away." "Kira," he whispered. Her name in his mouth tasted different now, not forgotten, regretful. She didn't let it sway her. "Lyra and Kyle are 5, she continued. "They look like you when they're serious, like me when they're plotting something." Corbin staggered back, gripping a nearby column. The room was spinning. 5. His knees nearly gave out. He stared at her, eyes wild. "Let me see them." "No." The answer sliced the air. Odessa tried to intervene again. "You've made your scene, Miss Blaze. Surely there's no need to embarrass yourself further." Kira turned to her sharply. "You tried to erase my existence, sent me away with nothing, lied to your son, falsified a medical report, and now you want to talk about embarrassment?" The room quieted. Guests were pretending not to stare, but every eye was on them. Kira took a breath, steadying herself. "I'm not here to beg. I'm not here to fight. I'm here because your empire dared to step on mine." She pulled a folded document from her clutch and handed it to Corbin. It was a photo. 2 children. 1 boy, 1 girl. Same curly hair. Same steel eyes. Same smirks. Corbin's hands shook as he held it. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know I had them." Kira nodded. "And if I had stayed gone, you never would have." He stared at the photo, blinking away something too raw to name. Then, slowly, he looked up at her. "What now?" She stepped back. "That depends on you." And just like that, she turned and walked away, leaving Corbin holding 5 years of silence, and Odessa staring at the woman she failed to destroy. Odessa Langford stood still in the middle of the ballroom, her glass of champagne untouched, her expression frozen like porcelain about to crack. The press had caught enough. The cameras hadn't stopped clicking. And her son, was still gripping a photo of 2 children he'd never known existed. Children that belonged to a woman she had thrown out like discarded linen. The murmurs swept through the room like wildfire. Twins. She hid them from the Langfords? Odessa lied to her own son? She smiled at a passing couple as if nothing had happened, as if her world wasn't splintering beneath her stilettos. But behind her eyes, rage simmered. She moved toward the balcony doors, cold wind tugging at her silk sleeves as she stepped outside alone. It wasn't supposed to go like this. Kira was supposed to disappear, stay buried beneath the shame. Instead, she had returned, richer, more powerful, and far more dangerous than the quiet maid Odessa once manipulated. She's not the same girl. No, now she had a name that meant something. A company feared by boardrooms. And worst of all, she had the children. Her grandchildren. Langford blood. And that couldn't be allowed to continue unchecked. She paced the balcony, the night air biting at her calm. This wasn't about money. This was about legacy. The Langford name would not be overshadowed by a woman who once scrubbed her mirrors. She pulled out her phone and dialed a secure number. A voice answered after one ring. Ms. Langford. I need everything you can find on Kira Blaze, she said coldly. Every asset, every vulnerability, every crack. Yes, ma'am. And find out where those children go to school. I want to know who picks them up, what time, their routine, everything. There was a brief pause. Should I engage any legal options? Not yet, Odessa said, her voice ice. Not until I'm certain she has more to lose than I do. She ended the call and stood there, staring out over the city like it owed her something. She would not go down quietly. Not to Kira. Not to anyone. Inside, Corbin was still seated by the bar, the photo clutched in one hand, his other buried in his hair as reality came crashing down around him. And across the ballroom, every guest now understood what Odessa had worked so hard to hide. Her grip on the Langford name was slipping, and the woman she had once discarded was about to burn her entire foundation to the ground. The Langford Tower parking lot glistened with fresh rain under a midnight sky. Streetlights flickered above the rows of luxury cars, casting shallow puddles in gold and silver reflections. Kira's heels splashed through them as she stormed across the lot, her clutch tight in hand, her jaw set like steel. She had said what she came to say. She wasn't looking for closure, and she wasn't interested in apologies. Then, Kira. His voice cracked through the night like thunder. She didn't stop. Don't walk away from me again, Corbin shouted, footsteps echoing as he chased her down the wet pavement. She turned sharply at the edge of the curb. Rain dripped from her lashes. Her dress clung to her legs. You let me disappear once without looking, she snapped. You don't get to follow me now. I didn't know. His chest heaved. I didn't know what she did. I didn't know you were pregnant. I didn't know you were alive. You didn't try hard enough, she said, voice quiet now but cutting deeper. You let your mother decide what was real. I trusted her. You shouldn't have. He flinched. They stood there in the rain, breathing hard, 5 years of anger between them, like fire and fog. I searched for you, he said again, softer this time. The moment I found out you were gone, I started digging, but everything was sealed, silent. You vanished. I thought you'd taken the money and... Do I look like someone who got paid to disappear? She shot back. Corbin's eyes traveled over her. The sharpness of her presence, the fire in her voice, the ache in her stare. No, he admitted. You look like someone who survived hell. Kira's throat tightened. She blinked fast. Corbin stepped closer. You kept them from me? She didn't move. They were mine too, he said. They weren't a secret, she answered. You just never asked the right questions. His hands trembled at his sides. I want to know them, please. Her chest rose and fell. They don't know who you are, she said. To them, you're just a face in an old photo. I can change that. And if I let you in, and you vanish again, if you show up one weekend and disappear the next, what then? I won't. You did once. Corbin swallowed hard. Rain drenched them both, but neither flinched. Water clung to his jaw, his eyelashes. His eyes burned. I made a mistake, he said, but I never stopped wondering about you. Every time I closed a deal, every holiday, every quiet moment, I thought of you. Kira looked away. Her fingers curled into her palm. Let me meet them, he said. Not because of guilt, not because of duty, but because I want to know them. I need to. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned back toward the street. Corbin moved on instinct. He caught her wrist. She didn't resist. He pulled her toward him, and before she could speak, he kissed her. Hard, deep, desperate. The rain roared around them, but neither cared. His lips found hers like they belonged there. Her fingers tangled in his soaked shirt, gripping him like memory and punishment. When he pulled back, their foreheads stayed pressed together, breathing the same air. I didn't stop loving you, he said. Not once. Her voice trembled. You don't even know who I am anymore. Then let me find out. Their lips met again, this time slower, no longer rage, but recognition. Kira's fingers slid up Corbin's soaked collar, tugging him down to her mouth moving over his with years of withheld emotion. His hands cradled her waist, pulling her against him like he didn't trust her to stay. The rain pounded harder, soaking them both through. Neither cared. She broke the kiss with a gasp, chest heaving. "This changes nothing," she whispered, even as her body arched into his. "It changes everything," he growled, brushing her soaked hair back. "You're mine, Kira. You were always mine." He kissed her again, deeper this time, one hand cupping her jaw, the other trailing down to her thigh, gripping it as though to remind himself she was real. She pulled back again, eyes wild. Car, now. His eyes burned with fire. Without another word, he led her to the black SUV parked at the edge of the lot. The moment the doors shut behind them, they were on each other like magnets snapped free from tension. She shoved his jacket off his shoulders, her hands tugging at his soaked dress shirt, buttons popping loose. He yanked the slit of her dress open, his fingers dragging along the inside of her thigh. She gasped, moaning into his mouth, her fingers clawing at his chest. "I dreamed about this," he panted. "Every night." "Show me," she demanded, her breath hot against his jaw. He slid his hand between her legs, finding her soaked with more than rain. "You're already ready for me. I've been ready for 5 years." That broke him. He shoved the driver's seat back, grabbed her thighs, and pulled her onto his lap. She straddled him, dress pushed aside, her body arching as he pushed inside her, slow, deliberate, until she gasped his name. He groaned into her neck. "You still fit me. Perfect." They moved in sync, hips grinding, bodies reconnecting with frantic purpose. Kira rocked her hips hard, her nails digging into his shoulders. She kissed him fiercely, teeth catching his bottom lip. "You're not allowed to forget this," she moaned. "I couldn't if I tried." Each thrust came with 5 years of buried pain, unresolved need, and desperate redemption. She rode him faster, their rhythm chaotic, raw, breathtaking. Corbin held her like she was the last thing anchoring him to the world. Her climax hit first, loud, trembling, her whole body curling into his as she gasped out his name. He didn't stop. His own release followed moments later, his grip tightening, his voice breaking in her ear as he came hard, deep inside her. They collapsed together, breathless, soaked, their bodies still joined. Kira leaned her forehead against his, eyes closed, heart pounding. Neither spoke. Not right away. Eventually, she whispered, "I hated you." "I hated myself," he replied. Rain drummed on the roof above them. "I don't forgive you," she added. "I'm not asking for forgiveness." "Then why now?" He cupped her face gently. "Because this time, I'm not letting you go." The car windows fogged with heat, the only sound the fading tap of rain on the roof. Kira lay curled against Corbin's chest, her cheek resting on his shoulder, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist. His heartbeat thudded beneath her ear, steady now, like a war had ended inside him. They didn't speak at first. Words would have ruined it. But time, as always, demanded movement. Kira sat up slowly, adjusting her dress without looking at him. Corbin watched her. "You don't regret that, do you?" he asked quietly. "No," she said, "but it doesn't fix anything." "I know." She smoothed her damp hair back, then turned to him. "This doesn't mean you're part of our lives." His jaw clenched slightly, but he nodded. "Then let me earn it." Kira studied him. "Why now?" she asked again. "Why fight after all this time?" "Because when I saw you tonight, I realized I didn't lose you 5 years ago. I gave you up without even knowing it," he said. "I believed my mother's lie because it was easier than chasing a truth I was afraid of." His voice cracked. "And now I see what that cost." Kira's expression softened, but not entirely. "There are no guarantees," she said. "Not for you, not for us. The twins don't know you, and I won't let you come in just to disappear again." "I don't plan to disappear," he said. She looked at him for a long moment, then quietly asked, "Do you even know how to be a father?" "No," he admitted, "but I'm ready to learn." She reached for the door handle, paused, then glanced back at him. "You'll need more than words, Corbin." "I'll bring proof," he replied. "Every day if I have to." She opened the door. The rain had stopped, but the world outside still smelled like thunder. As she stepped out, he called after her, "Kira." She turned halfway, her silhouette outlined by the glow of street lamps. "I don't deserve you," he said. Her eyes softened. No, she agreed. But they do. And with that, she walked away. Not as a woman torn, but as one still in control. By morning, the internet had caught fire. Kira didn't need to check the headlines. Maya walked into her office holding a tablet and a knowing look. They're everywhere, she said, placing the screen in front of her. Kira glanced down. The maid-turned-mogul, Kira Blaze, reveals Langford heirs in shocking gala confrontation. Langford matriarch faces backlash after hidden pregnancy scandal. Langford legacy threatened by illegitimate twins. Beneath the headlines were photo stills from the gala. Kiera in red, poised like vengeance incarnate, Corbin staring at the photo of his children, and Odessa in the background caught mid-expression for once uncomposed. Kira barely blinked. Any formal statements from their side? She asked. Not yet, Maya replied. But Odessa filed an injunction for preliminary custody review. She's trying to leverage her position as a concerned grandmother with a claim on the twins' stability. Kira scoffed. She hasn't even seen them. Maya nodded. The tabloids are leaning in your favor. Public opinion swaying hard. She won't care about that, Kira murmured. She's not fighting to win. She's fighting to bury me. Maya hesitated. Do you want to get ahead of it? Release a statement? No, Kira said. Let her speak first. Then I'll dismantle every lie with evidence. She stood and walked to the window. Below, the city buzzed with noise and motion. Cars, headlines, people who didn't know the war happening at the top floors. But Odessa did, and so did she. This wasn't a PR problem. It was a full-blown power struggle. And the battleground wasn't just public image. It was family. It was blood. And it was war. The buzzer on her desk chimed again. Maya's voice followed. Your attorney is here, and so is the child psychologist you requested. Kira nodded. Let's make it clear, she said. This isn't about damage control. It's about defending what's mine. She turned, spine straight, heels already clicking toward the door. If Odessa wanted a courtroom, she'd get one, but it wouldn't be the one she thought she could control. Odessa Langford arrived uninvited. No phone call, no warning. Just the sound of stilettos echoing through the Blaze Dominion lobby, followed by the firm rapping of her knuckles on Kira's office door. Maya looked alarmed, but Kira simply said, let her in. Odessa entered like she owned the room. Her tailored suit was flawless. Her hair, pinned tight, but her eyes, sharp as ever, carried something new. Panic. I came to speak as women, she said, placing her designer bag gently on the desk as if it gave her leverage. Not adversaries. Kira folded her hands calmly. Then speak. Odessa paced once, chin high. This isn't necessary. The courtroom, the spectacle. You've made your point. Kira raised a brow. Have I? You've embarrassed my family publicly, Odessa continued. But what you're doing now, dragging children into a legacy war, is beneath even you. Kira stood. No, Odessa. What's beneath me is pretending you care about those children. I'm their grandmother, who tried to erase their existence. Odessa's lips pressed thin. I did what was best for Corbin, for the Langford name. Kira leaned forward. You faked medical records, you threw a pregnant woman into the street, and now you want custody. Odessa didn't blink. You're unstable. You were poor, alone. The children deserve structure. They deserve a name that protects them. They have a name. Mine. You can't fight me forever. I don't need forever, Kira said coldly. Just long enough to bury every lie you ever told. Odessa's mask cracked just slightly. You think public sympathy will save you? I think truth will. A pause. Kira stepped closer. Those twins are not leverage. They're not currency. And they're not yours. Odessa's tone dropped. You think you're untouchable because you've built a company? No, Kira replied. I'm untouchable because I've already lost everything once, and I survived it. The silence burned. Odessa picked up her bag slowly. You've declared war, she said. Kira didn't flinch. No, you did. When you came for what's mine, Odessa turned and walked out, her heels striking harder than before. Maya entered a few seconds later. Well, she's scared, Kira said. Then why do I feel like she's about to get more dangerous? Kira exhaled. Because she is. The war had shifted. No longer waged in whispers or shadows. It now had a date, a courtroom, and a docket number. Kira stood at the long table in her conference room, flanked by her legal team. Case files were spread out before her like battle plans. "This isn't just a custody case," said Julia Marks, her lead attorney. "It's a smear campaign. Odessa's filing under claims of environmental instability, alienation from paternal family, and," she lifted a paper, "emotional manipulation." Kira didn't even blink. She's grasping with expensive claws," Julia replied. "We need documented proof. Medical records, statements, financials, witnesses who can testify to your parenting." Kira nodded. "You'll have it all." She turned to Maya. "Reach out to the twins' teachers. Pull every report, every award, every attendance record." Maya was already typing. "On it. And the hospital where I gave birth," Kira added. "The nurse who helped me deliver. Her name was Rena. She told me if I ever needed anything. Now I need her." Julia leaned forward. "One more thing. You'll be cross-examined. They're going to try to tear you apart." "They'll fail," Kira said. Her phone buzzed. "Corbin," she answered. "I just got served," he said. "She's going for full custody," Kira said. "Of our children." He exhaled hard. "I'm with you." There was no hesitation in his voice. "I'll testify. I'll go public. I'll tell the court everything she did. I should have done it sooner." She paused. "I believe you," she said. "It wasn't forgiveness, but it was the beginning of something close. You'll need to prepare," she added. "They'll come after your credibility too." "Let them," he said. "This time, I stand on the right side." She ended the call and looked back at Julia. "Put him on the witness list." Then she picked up a file from the table, a printed transcript of Odessa's voicemail from years ago, the one that included her cold command to remove the girl. It wasn't just personal now. It was evidence. Kira stared at it for a moment, then slid it across the table. "Let's give them the truth. All of it." Courtroom 6B in the Manhattan Family Division was packed. Reporters lined the hallway. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but that didn't stop the whispers, or the live bloggers, or the sketch artists trying to capture every raised eyebrow and every sharp glance. Kira walked in wearing a navy blue pantsuit that radiated control. No jewelry, no flash, just clarity and confidence. Corbin followed behind her in a charcoal gray suit, his expression unreadable. Odessa was already seated at the plaintiff's table, surrounded by her legal army, her posture straight, lips painted into a rehearsed smile of concern. Today, she played the role of devoted grandmother, sympathetic, grieved, concerned for the well-being of her poor, alienated grandchildren. Kira didn't flinch when their eyes met. Odessa looked away first. The judge entered, and the courtroom rose. Once seated, the lead attorney for Odessa's side launched straight into theatrics. "Your Honor," he began, pacing slowly, "this case is not about revenge. It's not about money. It is about two innocent children being withheld from the stability, legacy, and rightful family they deserve." He gestured toward Odessa, who dabbed her eye delicately with a silk handkerchief. "My client, a respected philanthropist and businesswoman, has been kept from her grandchildren for 5 years. No letters, no visits, no knowledge of their existence until a public spectacle forced the truth out. Is that justice? Or is that manipulation?" He turned sharply toward Kira. "The defendant, Ms. Blaze, has acted with blatant disregard for the children's emotional connection to their paternal lineage. She chose secrecy. She chose distance. She chose vengeance." Kira's jaw tightened. The judge nodded. "Defense?" Julia stood, calm and precise. "Your Honor, the plaintiff refers to Miss Blaze as vengeful, but what you will see is a woman who was abandoned, manipulated, and discarded while pregnant. A woman who built a life not out of spite, but out of strength." She turned to Odessa. "And you'll see that this grandmother, so concerned now, went to great lengths to erase the children from existence entirely, starting with a forged medical report." A few gasps echoed in the gallery. Odessa's attorney jumped to his feet. "Objection. Save it for evidence," the judge said, raising a hand. Julia continued. "Miss Blaze didn't keep the twins from anyone. She protected them. From the very woman who tried to silence their existence." The judge called for the first witness. Odessa's legal team called a child psychologist, one who had never met the children but had reviewed the public records and press coverage. Her testimony was as polished as it was hollow. "In my professional opinion, sudden exposure to paternal family at this stage could be emotionally disorienting. Stability is key. The Langford legacy provides structure, consistency." Julia stood for cross-examination. Have you ever met KL or Lyra? No, but So you've never spoken to them, never visited their home, never observed their behavior in person? Not directly, no. And you were paid by the plaintiff's team for this analysis? The psychologist shifted in her seat. Yes. No further questions. Next came a Langford Estate staff member, Odessa's housekeeper, who tried to spin Odessa's image as caring, charitable, and victimized. But under cross-examination, she slipped. Yes, I remember Miss Blaze. She worked quietly. Odessa didn't want her seen during events. And do you remember the night she was removed from the premises? A pause. I was told she resigned. Julia revealed security logs showing Kira's ID badge was deactivated at 5:02 a.m. No resignation paperwork. Just locked out. And when the court broke for recess, whispers filled the air like smoke. Odessa dabbed her cheek again with the handkerchief. But it no longer looked convincing. When the court reconvened, the atmosphere had changed. The gallery was full. The judge looked sharper. Even Odessa's legal team shuffled papers with a little more tension. Julia stood. Your Honor, the defense would like to call Miss Kira Blaze to the stand. Kira walked forward, calm and composed, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She took her oath and sat straight, her hands resting firmly on the railing in front of her. Miss Blaze, Julia began, can you tell the court why you didn't inform Mr. Langford of your pregnancy? Kira met the judge's gaze. Because I didn't get the chance. I was thrown out of the Langford estate the morning after the wedding. I didn't even know I was pregnant until days later. Who removed you? Odessa Langford. She sent men to escort me out before her son woke up. Julia nodded. And what reason did she give? She handed me a forged medical report claiming I was infertile, then said the contract was void and there would be no payment. I was told to vanish. There were murmurs in the courtroom. The judge raised a hand to silence them. Julia continued, can you produce that document? Kira reached into a folder and held it up. This is the copy I kept. The original clinic never issued this. Their name and logo were used without consent. The doctor listed never worked there. Julia took the document and entered it into evidence. And what did you do next? I left. Alone. With nothing. Did you contact Mr. Langford? I tried once. A call to the Langford offices. I was told he was traveling, that he wouldn't return calls regarding the wedding. And you never tried again? Kira's voice wavered slightly. I didn't have a choice. I had no money, no protection, and I was carrying twins. Julia paused, then stepped closer. What happened when the twins were born? I gave birth in a public hospital. No family, no friends, just one nurse who held my hand while I screamed. I named them Kyle and Lyra. I didn't put the father's name on the birth certificates. Why? Because I wasn't going to give Odessa a path to steal them. Odessa's attorney stood. Objection, accusatory language. Sustained. Julia kept her eyes on Kira. What did you do in the years following? I built a business. I raised them myself. I protected them. She pulled a stack of documents from her bag and handed them to Julia. These are pediatric records, school awards, therapy progress notes, evidence of a stable, loving home. Julia submitted them as exhibits. Did the children ever ask about their father? Kira's voice softened. Yes. I told them he was strong, that he made me brave. Silence. Julia walked to the center of the courtroom. And now, she said clearly, we would like to submit audio evidence. A voicemail left by the plaintiff the morning after Kira was removed from Langford Manor. The judge nodded. Julia pressed play. Odessa's voice poured into the room. Get her out, before he wakes. I don't care what it costs. She's forgettable. And if she tries to contact him, shut it down. No record, no trail, just make it quiet. Gasps erupted. Odessa didn't even attempt to mask her fury now. The judge raised his gavel. Order. Kira sat still. Julia looked to the judge. We rest our case. Odessa's attorney tried to recover, calling the voicemail incomplete and taken out of context. But the damage was done. The courtroom had heard it. So had Corbin. He sat behind Kira, fists clenched, his face pale. When the judge allowed for witness testimony, he requested to speak. He walked to the front and was sworn in. Mr. Langford, the judge said, what is your position in this case? Corbin looked directly at Kira. I'm not here to defend my mother, he said. I'm here to claim my children and support their mother. Odessa's attorney stood. You previously claimed to have no knowledge of the twins. How can we be sure you're fit to be involved now? Corbin met the lawyer's stare. I didn't know because I was lied to, because my mother staged a disappearance, but I know now, and I want to be their father. He looked at the judge. Ms. Blaze is not a threat to my children. She's their strength. I ask that full custody remain with her, and I'm prepared to back that with my own testimony and resources. Odessa's face was frozen with fury. The judge leaned forward, noted, "Court recessed for the day." As they exited, cameras flashed outside the courthouse. But the moment was Kira's. Not because she had won yet, but because she had spoken every word she was once too afraid to say. And now, the world was listening. The final day of trial brought a different kind of tension to the courtroom. There was no shouting, no theatrics, just silence, thick, alert, like the air before a downpour. The judge sat taller. The attorneys whispered less. And all eyes were on the one man who hadn't yet said enough, Corbin Langford. He took the stand again, this time as a formal witness, not just a father reclaiming what was lost. Julia rose. "Mr. Langford, could you tell the court, in your own words, why you believe full custody should remain with Miss Blaze?" Corbin looked at Kira first, then he looked at the judge. "When I married Kira, I didn't know her," he said plainly. "It was a contract, a selfish one. I signed something because my company required it, not because I wanted a wife." He paused. "But that night, it changed something. I didn't expect to feel anything. But I did. She wasn't just some quiet girl I barely noticed. She was honest, strong. And when I woke up and she was gone, I assumed she had taken the money and left, because that's what I was told." He shifted in his seat, voice tightening. "I asked questions, not many, but enough to be handed answers that looked clean. That sounded reasonable. My mother told me Kira was never pregnant, that she took the cash and vanished, that she wanted nothing to do with me." He swallowed. I believed her. That's my failure. He looked directly at Odessa now, and it cost me everything. Odessa stiffened, but said nothing. Corbin turned back to the judge. "I don't stand here as someone trying to rip children from their mother. I stand here as someone trying to undo the silence that destroyed us." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "This is a letter I wrote to Kyle and Lyra. I don't know when I'll be allowed to read it to them, but I want the court to hear it." The judge nodded. Corbin unfolded the paper with slow hands, then began. "Dear Kyle and Lyra, I missed your first steps. I missed your first words. I missed the first time you got sick, the first story you fell in love with, and every bedtime between then and now. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know you existed. That doesn't make it okay. It just makes it real. I wasn't ready to be a father 5 years ago, but I am now. I don't expect you to trust me. I don't expect you to love me, but I want to earn a place beside the mother who raised you better than I ever could have imagined. I'm not asking to take anything from you. I'm asking to stand beside what you already have. Your father." By the end of the letter, the courtroom was still. Even Odessa's attorneys didn't move. Julia's voice broke the quiet. "No further questions, Your Honor." The judge leaned back in his seat, then addressed the room. "I've heard enough. Ruling will be delivered tomorrow morning." The penthouse was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that meant emptiness, but the kind born from exhaustion, from too many words in public and not enough in private. Kira stood by the nursery door, watching her twins sleep. Kyle lay sprawled out like a little warrior after battle, arms and legs tangled in his blanket. Lyra curled tightly around her favorite stuffed bear, hair covering half her face. 2 worlds, 2 miracles. Corbin stood behind her. He didn't speak. He knew better now. He simply waited. Kira turned slowly, leading him down the hall without a word. They stopped in her bedroom, the door clicking shut behind them. No courtrooms, no cameras, just them. Corbin stood still, eyes on her like he was memorizing something fragile. "I meant every word in that letter," he said. "I know," she replied. "I should have fought harder for the truth. I should have—" She pressed a finger to his lips. "No more should haves. Not tonight." He nodded slowly. She walked toward him, fingers undoing the knot of his tie. Corbin's hands found her waist as she worked down the buttons of his shirt, pushing the fabric away, revealing the man beneath the suit, beneath the weight of guilt and years of silence. She leaned in, pressing a kiss to his chest. Not hunger, not anger, just need. They undressed slowly. Each article removed was a moment remembered. Each kiss, down her spine, along her neck, over her collarbone, was an apology without words. Kira led him to the bed, their bodies moving together in sync, not like strangers catching fire, but like something rebuilding, reclaiming what was never given space to grow. He kissed her as if she was air. She touched him like he was truth. When he slid into her, it wasn't rushed or violent or desperate. It was slow, measured, every movement deliberate, every gasp a promise. She wrapped her legs around him, eyes locked, fingers tangled in his hair. "You don't have to be perfect," she whispered. "I just want to be here," he breathed. He kissed her again, slower this time, their bodies moving in rhythm. A different rhythm, one that came from understanding. When release came, it was quiet, intimate. Tears wet her cheeks as he held her tight, their bodies still connected. He kissed them away, one by one. No more running, no more lies, just two people trying. When they finally pulled the blankets over themselves, tangled and bare, Corbin pulled her against him, hand splayed across her stomach. "I never got to say it," he whispered. She turned her head slightly. "I love you, Kira." She didn't answer right away, but she didn't need to. She just placed her hand over his and held it there. The sheets barely rustled as Kira rolled onto her side, her back pressing gently into Corbin's chest. He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close, his nose nuzzling the curve of her neck. His breath was warm against her skin, steady, calming. "You still smell the same," he murmured. She smiled faintly. "You remember?" "I never forgot." His hand slid slowly down her waist, fingers tracing the curve of her hip, slipping along the dip of her lower back, the intimacy in his touch more reverent than rushed. Kira inhaled softly. This time, there was no urgency, no anger, no rain, only warmth and rediscovery. Corbin kissed the back of her neck, then her shoulder, then the small of her back as she arched slightly in response. His lips moved slowly, as if reacquainting himself with sacred territory. She turned to face him, eyes wide, the dim bedroom light catching the glint of heat in them. Corbin's gaze traveled across her face, then down to her collarbone, to the slow rise and fall of her chest. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "But this is something else." She pulled him into a kiss. Slow, deep, tender, her hands sliding along his sides, drawing him closer until there was no space left between them. He moved over her again, body sinking into hers with a sigh that trembled in his chest. She gasped, arching into him as he pushed inside her, slower this time, deeper, grounding her, anchoring them both in something beyond lust. Each thrust was a conversation, each breath, a line they hadn't dared to say before. Kira clutched his back, her legs wrapping tightly around his waist as he moved in rhythm, hitting the places only he ever had, the places memory never let anyone else reach. She moaned his name, not with desperation, but with claim. He kissed her jaw, her cheek, her lips, worshipping her without shame. "You're mine," he whispered, "and I'm yours, no matter what happens tomorrow." Her hands cradled his face. "You don't get to leave again," she said. "I won't. You don't get to love me halfway." "I don't want halfway," he breathed. "I want forever." She flipped him onto his back, straddling him in one fluid motion, her thighs pressed against his hips, her body sinking onto him slowly, teasing, commanding. Corbin groaned, eyes closing as she began to move, slow circles at first, then harder, deeper. She braced her hands on his chest, head tilted back as her breath grew uneven, the power of her reclaiming her pleasure, her rhythm, her control. He gripped her hips, guiding her pace, but letting her lead. "God, Kira," he rasped. She rode him harder, faster, sweat glistening across her chest, her breath catching every time he thrust up to meet her. He sat up suddenly, arms wrapping around her as she wrapped her legs tighter. They kissed between every breath, every thrust, every heartbeat. She cried out as release tore through her, shaking, clinging to him like the world had collapsed and only his body held her up. Corbin followed seconds later, his voice caught in her neck, his hands buried in her hair as he came hard, deep, with everything he had left. They collapsed together, tangled and trembling, their bodies spent, but their hearts still racing. He held her afterward, tighter than before, and she didn't let go. Not this time. Not ever again. Moonlight spilled through the open curtains, casting a soft glow across their skin. Kira lay with her head on Corbin's chest, fingers tracing lazy circles over the faint scar on his shoulder. His hand rested on her hip, unmoving, steady. as if afraid letting go might pull them back into the chaos outside these walls. "You awake?" she whispered. "Barely," he murmured. "But I'm not missing a second of this." She smiled against his skin. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them didn't need to be filled. It was peace now, not avoidance. Corbin tilted his head slightly, his fingers brushing her cheek. "I should have chased you," he said quietly. "No matter what they told me. I should have trusted what I felt." "You didn't know how," she said. "Back then, you only knew how to follow power. Now you're learning how to stand inside it." He exhaled. "Do you think they'll hate me? The twins?" "No," she replied softly. "They'll be curious, protective, probably suspicious. Kyle will ask for spreadsheets. Lyra might demand you take her to a unicorn farm." He laughed under his breath. "They're incredible, Corbin," she said, her voice almost breaking. "I raised them to never need you, but I never taught them not to want you." He turned toward her fully, cupping her face. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," he said. "And no matter what happens in that courtroom tomorrow, I'll be proud to be by your side." She leaned into his palm, closing her eyes. "I'm tired of fighting," she whispered. "Then don't," he said. "Not alone." She looked at him again. "Just promise me one thing, anything, that if they give us peace, we'll take it." He kissed her forehead. "I promise." They held each other until sleep pulled them under, not in fear of what was coming, but finally with the hope of what might be waiting after. And outside the nursery door, two small shadows stood quietly, Kale holding Lyra's hand. "I told you," she whispered. "He does look like us." Kyle nodded. "We'll talk about it after breakfast." And they tiptoed back to bed. The courtroom was standing room only. When the judge returned with the ruling, the tension in the air was sharp enough to cut. Kira sat beside Corbin, her hand resting on her lap, her expression calm but unflinching. Corbin's fingers tapped silently on his knee. Across the aisle, Odessa sat upright, lips pursed, eyes fixed forward as if willing the outcome into her favor. But the court didn't bow to wills. It bowed to evidence, and Kira had brought truth in full. The judge's voice rang out, even and clear. "This case has revealed a complex and emotionally layered history. What is not in question is the capability and stability of Miss Kira Blaze as a mother. Her actions since the birth of her children have demonstrated not only competence, but an unwavering commitment to their safety, well-being, and development." Odessa's jaw tightened. Conversely, the plaintiff, while maintaining a strong public profile, has failed to demonstrate good faith in her relationship to the children. There is substantial and credible evidence of willful interference, coercion, and manipulation during the early stages of Miss Blaze's pregnancy. The judge turned to Kira. "Full legal and physical custody of Kyle and Lyra Blaze is awarded to the defendant. The court further grants Miss Blaze the sole authority to determine the conditions and timeline, if any, under which the minors may be introduced to other members of the paternal family." Corbin's hand found hers, gripping it tightly. The gavel slammed down. Case closed. But it wasn't over, not for Odessa. Before she could even stand, a pair of uniformed agents entered the courtroom, weaving through rows of murmuring onlookers. One approached the bench. The other stepped directly toward Odessa. "Odessa Langford," he said, producing a badge and a stack of documents. "You are under investigation for corporate fraud, document falsification, obstruction of justice, and perjury. You are hereby served with a federal subpoena." Gasps erupted. Kira turned just in time to see the blood drain from Odessa's face. She tried to rise, to speak, to defend herself with one of her infamous monologues. But no one listened. The courtroom no longer bent to her name. The agents escorted her out the side door, reporters scrambling to follow. Julia leaned toward Kira, whispering, "Safe finally moved. We submitted the hospital forgery files last week along with your deposition. That cracked the dam." Kira nodded slowly. It wasn't victory she felt. It was release. Later, standing on the courthouse steps, Corbin faced the press. "I learned the truth too late," he said. "But I stand by the decision the court made today. My children belong with their mother, and from this day forward I will protect them alongside her." He turned to Kira, offering her the mic. She shook her head. "I've already said everything I needed to," she replied. "Now it's time to live it." They walked away together, no longer fractured. Behind them, the Langford name cracked under the weight of its lies. And ahead, something new waited to be built. Together, 6 months later, the skyline changed. It wasn't the buildings, or the lights. It was the name shining across the tallest glass tower in Midtown. Blaze Langford Global. Not Langford, not Blaze. Both. The merger was more than branding. It was a statement, a rewriting of history. Kira sat at the head of the executive table during the first joint board meeting. Her presence alone quieted the room. Next to her, Corbin reviewed the new foundation proposals while legal and finance walked through the strategy. No one dared question who was in charge. "We'll finalize the Women's Health Initiative next," she said, turning to the philanthropy director. "I want the first clinic operational by January." "Yes, ma'am." Corbin leaned in, voice low. "You really don't rest, do you?" She smirked. "You knew that before you asked me to build a future with you." He chuckled. "Right. Forgot who I married." Later that day, they toured the new pediatric wing at Langford Memorial Hospital, soon to be renamed under a new division, the Kyle and Lyra Children's Center. Reporters took photos as Kira crouched beside the plaque, the twins on either side of her. Lyra beamed. Kyle looked suspiciously at the photographer, but let him live. Corbin stood behind them, one hand on each of their shoulders. It was the kind of picture no one had seen 5 years ago. Now, it was everywhere, and no one questioned it. With Odessa out of the picture, facing a string of indictments and frozen assets, Corbin officially stepped down from Langford Group. He didn't want the power his mother had built on secrets. He wanted legacy rooted in truth. So, he poured himself into building hospitals. Kira continued scaling the empire. Together, they balanced what once tried to destroy them. Some nights they'd meet in the penthouse kitchen at midnight, barefoot, exhausted, laughing over burnt toast and spilled wine. "I thought success would feel louder," Corbin once said, looking out over the city lights. "It's quieter when it's real," Kira replied. And it was. There were still calls to take, crises to manage, decisions that could change entire industries. But at home, everything slowed. The twins adjusted. Slowly, beautifully. Corbin didn't try to be their father overnight. He showed up, consistently, with pancakes, with apologies, with patience, and the kids noticed. Kyle started asking him questions about architecture and game design. Lyra made him watch 5 princess movies before she decided he was emotionally capable. Kira didn't push it. She just watched it unfold. And one night, while brushing her teeth, Lyra leaned against the doorframe and said, "Mommy? Yeah, baby? It's okay if you love him." Kira turned, toothbrush still in hand. "Because I think I do." The next morning, Kyle asked if they could call him Dad. Not because anyone asked, but because they wanted to. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, built from the ashes, carved from truth. The twins were only 6, but they were already becoming legends. Kyle designed a new board game prototype using cardboard, string, and half a box of cereal. He presented it at the company's Innovation Day like a miniature CEO. His logic was flawless, his presentation serious. He even wore a tie. Lyra, on the other hand, started a student-led kindness campaign at school. "Empires built on love last longer," she said during the school assembly, quoting her mother without even knowing it. Kira and Corbin watched from the back of the auditorium, side by side. "They're ridiculous," Kira whispered, blinking away tears. "They're perfect," Corbin replied. He reached over and took her hand. Back home, the penthouse walls bore fewer sharp edges now. More art made of handprints, school certificates, little reminders that power didn't just reside in conference rooms and stock reports. It also lived in bedtime stories, in pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, in the silence of trust rebuilt. On the balcony one evening, as the twins played inside, Corbin wrapped his arms around Kira from behind. They watched the city flicker. "I used to think legacy meant control," he said. She leaned back into him. "It means what we leave standing after we're gone." He kissed her temple. "Then I want our legacy to be them. They already are." He turned her gently toward him. "And what about us?" Kira smiled, then took his hand and placed it over her belly. He blinked. "Wait." She nodded slowly. A beat passed. Then he laughed, a deep, full laugh, pulling her close, lifting her off the ground. "You're serious?" "I wanted to wait until the gala," she said, laughing too. "But you've been patient. And honestly, I couldn't hold it in anymore." He kissed her, long and full of gratitude. "Boy or girl?" he asked. "Too early. Twins again?" She groaned playfully. Don't you dare curse me. He dropped to one knee, hands on her waist. However many, whoever they are, thank you, he whispered, for giving me another chance to do this right. Kira cupped his face, her thumbs brushing the corners of his smile. You already are. Inside, Lyra peeked through the glass. Kyle stood beside her. Are they kissing again? She asked, unimpressed. Definitely, Kyle replied. Gross. Lyra rolled her eyes. Get the camera. We're blackmailing them later. And just like that, legacy wasn't something they chased anymore. It lived and breathed inside their home. It giggled down the hallway. It kicked beneath Kira's ribs. It moved forward, unafraid, because the past didn't break them. It built them. And so, the story came full circle. From a desperate maid abandoned at dawn to a woman who reshaped her destiny, not through revenge, but through resilience. Kira Blaze didn't just survive what they did to her. She rose above it. She protected her children. She built an empire. And when love returned, she didn't let her pain make the decisions. She let her power speak instead. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was hard, raw, earned. But the ending? It was hers. Dear viewers, if this story moved you, even a little, if it reminded you that no matter what others take from you, you still have the power to rebuild, then please, don't just scroll away. Tap that like button. It helps YouTube show this to more people who need to hear it. Leave a comment below. What would you have done if you were Kira? Subscribe if you believe in love that grows from ashes and power that comes from pain. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder. You don't have to be born powerful to become unstoppable. Because at the end of the day, there's no love more beautiful than the kind that survives betrayal. No victory more profound than choosing healing over hate. And no legacy more lasting than the family we build through fire. Kira gave birth to twins, but she also birthed strength. She lost everything, but created more. And as Corbin kissed her belly beneath the stars, a new life growing again inside her, she knew. She hadn't just changed her story. She rewrote the ending. And it was only the beginning.